All right. Hey, John, thanks so much for joining me and being willing to tell your story. How you doing?
Okay. And you?
You really doing well?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
New digs over not too far from the church.
Yeah, I'm enjoying my new residence. Made a lot of friends, get together with them every day, and we get into kind of a routine of conversations about various things that are going on around us. And
How'd that go through the election, which just happened? We okay?
we
We
didn't talk
survived.
we
Didn't
didn't
talk
talk
about
about it
it.
all
Smart.
that much.
Good.
So
Good. That's great advice for anyone who's watching this.
we
Keep
want
your head down.
we wanted to keep that friendship
Yeah,
going.
exactly. It's not worth relationships. And
No,
it's just
we
nah.
have one fella who seems to be bent on getting himself into trouble, and we've all had a session with him to try and get him straightened out. And I don't think he's caught on yet that
Yeah.
some of the things he's doing might be best not done.
I
So
love how you put that. So I wanted to have you on Faith in the Struggle because I haven't had I've had I've had conversations with people on the podcast that have that have had loss, and you've had all kinds of loss, as we'll get into, but specifically not had anyone who lost a wife at an older age that you were married a long time to. My memories of you and Joni coming, I still have you in my phone as John Joan Pillings because yeah, your number at the time,
mhm.
um, and and that's kind of how I saw you guys, and I met you later in life. You've been doing ministry in many churches, I know, but um, just great memories of her hug and her welcoming, and you guys were such a great team.
Yes,
How long were you married for?
64 years.
64
Yeah.
years.
I met her when she was 16.
Yeah.
When she was 17, I slipped a diamond ring on her finger when she was going in to graduate from high school,
Yeah.
and married her when she was 18.
It's good advice for guys, man. When you catch a fish, put her in the net.
Right.
Not really, not really.
Yeah.
These days, people take it too literally,
Yeah.
But
Yes.
so 64 years. Why don't you tell me like what happened? Like take me through like because it was kind of sudden. She got sick, right? So what happened there?
It was during COVID,
Yep.
and I had not had any trouble with COVID, even though I was with her and she had a couple of rounds of it.
Yeah.
But she came down with viral pneumonia
Mm,
and tested positive
mm,
for for COVID, and so they put her in the hospital.
mm. What
Eight
was
day,
that like when she first went into the hospital? Were you like, okay,
I couldn't see her
yeah, you couldn't even go and see her.
because of the requirements, no visitors. And I would try to talk with her on the phone.
Mm,
The nurse would dial my house number, and she couldn't even talk to me.
yeah.
It was like, hello, goodbye. So
Man,
she
that's
lasted,
hard. I mean, you've had ministries where you and Joni would visit people, and you recognize the the importance of having
yes,
people
yes.
there present, even if you can't talk. Someone's there. You weren't able to do that. Man, what was that like?
At that point, um, I had no longer been involved on a
Yeah,
formal level. However, that didn't stop us from
but what
uh,
was it like
doing things.
not being able to be there for your wife?
Very difficult,
Yeah,
and especially when I couldn't talk to her on the phone because she just couldn't handle it.
right. So you're
The one thing that helped me greatly was the call I received from a nurse in the unit at the hospital where Joni was resting.
yeah.
And she said, if you get up here, we'll suit you up with all the protections that we use as nurses, and you can go in and spend all the time you want with her. And this is with the COVID restrictions. I was very
Was this
fortunate.
because they thought she's not going to make it?
Oh, it wasn't a case of thought. They knew she
They knew.
wasn't going to make
Yeah.
it.
So
Yeah.
they knew.
So I ended up spending the better part of a day with her in her room.
Mm,
Um, she was mostly comatose at that point.
Yeah.
The thing that I've often heard said, the hearing is the last to break down when a person is dying. And I would say to her, I love you.
Mm.
And her hand would lift up off the mattress and reach out.
Mm.
That was tough. But
Very.
I'm so thankful I had that.
Yeah. What do you remember during that specific time when you're feeling helpless, not able to visit her, call her, but she can only say one word? Um, do you remember what your relationship with the Lord was? What was your prayer life like? Did you feel distant from God, or did you feel even closer to God because you were going through that?
I think closer, simply because it was a time where I needed him. There was nothing I could do to change things,
No, right.
and he was the only one that could. I think what helped me a lot is I was able to say, she knows the Lord, so
Yeah,
she belongs
sure
to him.
does. Sure does.
And
Yeah.
I could rest a little bit easier knowing that.
Yeah.
It was a help to know she loved God, loved the Lord, and I did too.
Right.
So
She goes into hospital though. At first, you're thinking, hopefully, they'll be able to help her. I
hmm,
mean, it's not like she had last stage of cancer, and there's just no.
no, no.
It's something that people can recover from, right? But that was scary, especially with her underlying conditions and age and
Yes,
all that.
yes,
So your prayer life, obviously, in the beginning was bring healing, bring her home. And then as it started to progress, I remember us, and we couldn't see each other in person either.
hmm,
But we would talk on the phone, and I can remember as it kind of progressed and hearing like, doesn't look good. Did, was, was there any like, why aren't you answering this prayer, God? Was there any of that? Or was it just like, all right, like you just said, this is God's will?
You know, as I think back, no, there was no,
Mm,
why aren't you doing this, Lord? I've prayed, I've asked you,
mm,
I trust you. I was at peace
yeah.
then, and I know that sounds crazy,
Mm,
but the fact is, she was going home to be with the Lord. It wasn't like she was going to go clear across the country and set up a house on her own.
right.
Uh,
Right.
and I had reached the point in my experience with the Lord to leave things in His hand.
Mm,
Your will be done, Lord.
mm,
I don't think I ever prayed that particular prayer as hard as I did in the few days before she passed away.
yeah.
So it was uh, it was difficult.
Mm,
I can't just brush it off.
yeah.
You don't walk away from 64 years together. Actually, the 3 years we went together on top of that. So that
Yeah.
was almost three-quarters of a
Yeah.
century, if you want to look at it that way.
Most of your life except your
Yeah,
childhood,
yeah,
right? Like
yes,
that's
yes. It's
what
it's
was it like being as she's in the hospital, you're at home now, like you're alone. Did you have a sense of that at
yes,
that time?
yes,
Yeah.
and I think that wasn't necessarily a bad thing
Mm,
because even before she took her last breath, I was prepared for it.
mm-hmm.
I had watched a number of people die and times of ministry and all.
Mm,
Uh, because when it's a wife or a child, that's a different story. But I was prepared for it. When I went to the hospital, she passed away. I left and came home. I did feel a sense of I have lost someone
mm.
because that's what happened.
What's the biggest like when she is no longer there 64 years, is there one or two things that like you miss the most? Obviously you miss her, but like that are really stark.
I would say right at the top of the list was her cooking.
Yeah.
I don't cook, so that was a
Yeah.
major loss.
Yeah.
But just the companionship.
Yeah.
You know, she
Yeah.
was a very easy person to get along with.
Yeah.
If if you couldn't make friends with her, there was something wrong with you, not her.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah. So you're used to waking up, we're there, breakfast, coffee, whatever your routine, we're there for meals, we're
Yes,
there.
yes.
Like now she's not there anymore.
Mm.
That's
And I still feel that way to some degree.
of course. You think that'll ever go away?
No.
No.
And I'm going to say something that might not make sense to the
Mm.
average person, but I don't want it to go away.
No. Yeah. Because if it went away, it would lessen the importance of her in a way. If you
And
were
it would
just like,
take away something that I want to keep in my mind. I have two photographs in my living space. One is her engagement picture,
mm-hmm.
and the other one is one taken of both she and I. I think it was on the 30th wedding anniversary, where she's standing next to my shoulder. I'm sitting in a chair, and those are the two photographs that mean the most to me.
Mm.
And so, and I look at them every day.
64 years. I mean, that means there was a lot of times where things weren't good. There's got to
Mhm.
be 64 years, right?
Mhm.
What got you through those times?
She was my love.
Mm.
And I think that pretty much says it all.
Mm.
Um, we talked about a lot of different things about what would happen if one of us passed away. How would we feel if someone came along in the life of the survivor,
Mm.
and it became a relationship.
Mm.
So things like that, we weren't afraid to talk about it.
Yeah.
We had a very good relationship to the point where it was a good conversation whenever that subject came up.
What? Because that doesn't just happen by chance. Obviously, you were compatible, so it's easier when two personalities are compatible. But you don't get to a point where you're able to communicate like that. Like there had to. What kinds of things earlier in your marriage do you think helped with that, bring you to that point?
One of the things was always being willing to say, I'm sorry,
Mm.
when something was out of hand.
That's huge. Yeah.
Yes, yes,
Especially
it
when
is.
you're younger, you're always right.
You're always right when you're young.
Yeah.
And that I'm speaking for myself now.
Mm. Yeah.
But we had a good relationship because we worked at it.
Mm.
It wasn't something we expected just to simply happen.
Yeah.
I can think of times we'd have an argument, there'd be words between us,
Mm-hmm.
and my best response to that, to prohibit it going any further, was to get out of the house, go out for a walk or go for a drive. And when I'd return home, when the door opened, I'd hear her in the living room, and she'd say, "Hi, hon," and I knew things were just the way they should be.
Like, you don't have to sleep on the couch tonight.
So, little things like that, which really weren't so little.
They're not. There's a lot of humility, but that comes to your faith and walking with Jesus
Yes.
is learning to say,
Yes.
I need to ask for forgiveness. I need to say I'm sorry and recognize, What's the hardest thing you guys ever had to do together?
Watching our son go through the hell of being treated for cancer.
Mm. Yeah.
I've told people this. I don't know what their response is because nobody says anything, but it would have been easier all around if he had passed away a year earlier. Just
How
for
come?
the effect of the medication they gave him after they cured him of cancer.
Mm.
Uh, some kind of a mixture they injected into his body
Mm.
to eliminate any floaters, any cancer cells that might be in the bloodstream.
Right.
And it literally shrank his brain by 20%.
Mm.
That was probably the hardest thing. in recent years.
Right, because he's an adult, and you're trying to be there for him and for each other. Did that? What was that harder to walk with the Lord on that one, as far as your prayer life and?
I have to say no.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I knew he was sick. I knew the chances of his surviving once they determined uh, what had happened to his brain. Uh,
Yeah,
I learned, short of a miracle, he's not going to get better.
yeah.
And
Did that draw you and Joni closer together, or were you?
yes, yes, definitely.
Because often it happens the reverse. I'm sure you know.
Oh, yes. Yes,
So why do you think it drew you closer together going through such a horrible thing like that?
we loved each other. We loved our kids.
Yeah.
We still love the two that remain.
Mm.
It
Yeah.
made it easier, but easier was not necessarily
Yeah.
a good thing.
No. No. So it actually bonded you in a way.
Yes.
Yeah.
And along with that, we were working with a lot of seniors who were going through all sorts of difficulties due to their age and all. And
Yeah.
so that kept us busy. It was very rewarding to be able to minister to the seniors in the church we were in at the time.
Yeah.
And that's a ministry I asked God for without telling him what I thought was best. I left that up to him.
Yeah. Yeah. It gave you a lot of front row experience of this is the way life goes sometimes.
Yes.
And if we're not careful, it can divide us. If we argue over how this should go or let this.
No, she was as much a part of my ministry as I was.
Yeah.
I would say she probably made 75% of the calls I made.
Mm.
And it didn't matter night or day. We were 24/7.
Mm.
She'd have supper half cooked, take it off the stove, put it in the refrigerator. We'd get back whatever time, and she'd pull it out and finish cooking it, and we'd have an evening meal. So
Yeah.
never complained.
You were a team.
She never got the recognition that she should have had.
Yeah. She
But-
didn't want it probably, huh?
Well, it didn't change her,
No.
not one single bit. But she would have made any pastor a good pastor's wife.
Yeah. Well, she was. She was essentially you pastored people. Maybe you weren't official, but as far as like, a pastor, but you were a team and that's a beautiful thing that, so were you there when she had her last breath or were you not there?
I had been up for the better part of the day in which she passed away, and the nurses in that unit said, "You need to get some rest." And they set up a day bed, and during the time I was sleeping, she passed.
Okay.
And then they suited me up with the protective equipment, and I went in and sat with her for a while, even though she was gone,
Yeah.
and just said my goodbyes. And
What was that like?
not easy at all.
You also had to be there by yourself. It would have been nice to have others, but
Well, my kids didn't live nearby, so
yeah.
that eliminated
Yeah.
the potential to have someone with me.
Mm.
I just had to, I guess, I just had to go through it because I wanted to take those few moments just to see, just to be with her, even though she wasn't there.
And when that time is done and you handle whatever details you got to handle, you drive back home, walk into your house. Was it surreal? I know you'd been living alone for 8 days or so, right? Since she'd been in the hospital, but there was had to have been some weirdness that she's.
It hit me when I
Yeah.
walked in the house, realized I was going to be alone
What was that like when it hit you? What does that mean?
It's just like a wave that swept over me and still does.
Yeah.
There are times when, for no apparent reason, it'll just wash over me like a wave at the beach. And
Was there, yeah. What's that like? Do you feel like choked up? Do you feel,
sometimes,
yeah.
yes, there are times when I shed tears still.
Mm.
She's been gone now for 3 years. No.
More probably, right? COVID, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
4 or 5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So uh, it,
So you're back at your house and feeling that wave of um, emotion, but there also, I mean, was there feelings a little bit of fear? I mean, you had a really great partner dealing with life, and now you don't have her anymore.
there were thoughts about how am I going to handle some of the details. She took care of the paying of the bills and
Mm-hmm.
any questions about health insurance. She knew who to call and how to understand what they told her and all.
Yeah.
And I'm still struggling with some of those things. But,
Yeah.
you know, I guess, and it doesn't replace her, but there are enough people at the cotton mill where I live
Mm-hmm.
that have gone through the same situations
Yeah.
and who, in their own right, have a working knowledge of various parts of life that I
Yeah.
don't have. So
But when this first happened, because I mean, that's fairly, you moved there, what, 4 or 5 months ago now?
yes,
Yeah. So in the beginning, you're left in your house.
Hmm.
I mean, obviously you have great kids, and I know Mark's been a huge help to you, but you know, he's in Virginia. So you're kind of left there in some of the details, but it's like even just the day to day, like, okay, well, Joni's not going to be cooking for me,
no, no,
you know?
it
And
makes it difficult.
yeah.
I I tend to buy meals more than perhaps I should, but
Yeah. Well, it's also really hard to cook for one person,
yes,
even if you know, had done more of the cooking when she was with you. It's just
well,
cooking for two is tough. Cooking for one, you can make something and have it for a while. You can do that kind of thing. But it's like, you know, I think a lot of people struggle with that.
I would go in the kitchen a lot of times when she was still at home, and she had a saying. She said, "Wherever I go, you're already there." In other words, you're in my way. Get out of my kitchen.
It's amazing how you just could foresee her movements like that, John.
Oh yeah, it takes a real skill to do that, much to her chagrin.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's So so you lose her, and now you get a plan, but we didn't do the funeral for a while, if I remember.
3 months,
Yeah,
and
so-
it wasn't a funeral as far as I'm concerned.
yeah, celebration.
Yeah.
And it was. It was.
I
It was one of the best.
I had a lot of good comments. I think it was refreshing the fact that we didn't dwell on the loss as much as we did on the life.
Well, there's something to be said for waiting a little while, which you can do now with cremation. And I don't know. I think I always tell people to each his own or her own, right?
Yes.
Like it's grief is grief. You should. It's not a sin not to do something. So I want to be clear about it. But I think it's a huge mistake to not do anything, which more and more people, not usually church people, but just because they don't know how to deal with grief. And if you don't have a relationship with the Lord, like grief is too overwhelming, and so they just want to pretend it's not there, but it's there, and so then they don't do anything, and it's like it's not healthy. You know, there should be some kind of remembrance, celebration, however you want to do it. But in your case, my only concern with the 3 months is John going to add something else to this service and make it 4 hours long. But we had the what do you call it, bagpipes, and
Yep.
it was great. So it worked out really great. But you had already processed some of that real numbness and grief. You're still dealing with it, obviously, but it allows that space to be able to now dwell on the really good things.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's part of why that happened. But still, you got to deal with the paperwork and all that. I get that, but that's a huge challenge. But what was the first few weeks like? Like, just did your routines change? Did you? I mean, we were still dealing with the stupid COVID stuff, so man, that adds a whole element to it. You know, you want to go places, but where are you going to go?
Well, I've never had COVID.
Yeah, I know, but the restrictions is what I
Yes,
mean.
yes.
You know, so there weren't as many gatherings of people and places to go at that time as they would be if this happened to you right now. You know, you could spend more time with people, but you're kind of alone a lot, I'm guessing.
I would sum that up in a very simple statement. I believe it's a line from a song, and I don't know the name of the song, but it says, "A house is not a home when no one's there."
Mm,
That's what it was. It was just a place
mm,
to live. It wasn't a home.
yeah,
And that was tough,
yeah. How did you sleep?
fitfully most of the time.
Yeah, yeah. How did there's as you know very well, there's people who go through something similar and it's like they're stuck. And I get it. But you've never been like that, at least from my vantage point.
No.
You've managed to keep on living in the best way you know how. How come, do you think, for you?
Well, first of all, I know the Lord is Savior.
Yeah.
I know one day I'm going to be with Him.
Mm.
Um, they say,
Joni's like, I ain't cooking for you up here,
Yeah.
though, buddy.
well, we won't have to worry about husband, wife, and all
No,
that. It's
no.
going to be one happy gang.
That's it. That's it. Yeah.
But it's what was it you asked me?
It's how did you, like I said, some people get stuck and they're just like in that grief, understandably, 64 years or whatever it might be for someone. Um, and for you, you've managed to still deal with that, but live life. And you obviously started with saying your faith has been the most instrumental. But anything else that you did regarding your faith? Is there a way you prayed? Is there Bible verses? Is there things that you did that helped you? I'm guessing it's a lot of what you did before. Your faith was very strong because you had developed that relationship with Jesus. But anything else that?
Well, my church
Mm,
and the people in it have been a major part of the healing process.
how come?
They fill perhaps only a little bit the void of not
Yeah.
having my wife there.
Yeah. What are the kinds of things that the church people have done or did do that were helpful?
Been invited to their home,
Mm,
simple things.
mhm,
I get to see them,
mhm.
not always on a regular basis, but they're still my friends, even though
Yeah.
at the time we became friends, it was with both
Yeah.
Joni and myself.
Mm,
So it helped a lot and still does.
mm.
And I expect it will continue that way. And the new friends I've made where I'm living now, well, they certainly don't come even close to taking Joni's
No.
place, and I don't expect them to,
Mm,
have helped. They've accepted me, I've accepted them.
yeah.
And they know where I stand.
Mhm.
It's amazing how many times you don't even realize you're talking about the spiritual aspect of life. And believe it or not, people remember that.
Yeah. Yeah. People are thinking about it whether they don't want
Mm-hmm.
to or admit it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you I would also say though that for you to be ministered to in those times, you needed to be willing to be ministered to. And
Yes.
some are like, "Oh, leave me alone," or I don't want to be a bother," and you never did that.
No, not at all, because that would have meant shutting out people who were my friends.
Mm,
And I needed them.
yeah,
And I hope in a way they needed me in order to express what they did.
right. And I wonder if that's I wonder if that's a little bit because you and Joni had been on the other side so often, and you recognized how much, really just how much of a blessing it is to be able to put that half cooked meal in the fridge and go, like, it was a blessing to do that. It was hard sometimes, ministry's hard, but
Yes.
in the grand scheme of things, you're like, if they didn't let us do that, that would have robbed us of ministering.
Yes.
So now you're on the other side of it, and you're like, they want to do this for me. It's not like I'm calling everybody up saying, someone come pay attention to me. It was, these people want to help me and bless me. Why would I stop them from doing that?
Well, as you said, there are people who won't allow
Yeah.
someone else to do that. I wasn't made that way.
No.
Not at all. I was willing to give, but I was willing to receive in return.
Yeah. I think it's an important thing for people to hear. As a pastor, and I'm sure you've run into this in your days as well, but just like when someone needs help, like, hey, so-and-so wants to help. Oh, no. And that's what usually the thing that gets people to consider it is that very thing. I'll say, if you don't, you're robbing that person who wants to bless you.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, I don't want to do that. No, you don't. So receive it, get to pride. Like, let's, cut through some of this pride and say, someone wants to bless me and I'm going to let them.
Yes.
My wife's always like, you have no problem receiving gifts, huh? I'm like, nope. I do want store-bought and gift card. No, or cash. That's fine too.
There you go.
But you really availed yourself to that. And I know that's something that others might take for granted, but I don't, because I've seen so many not. And it's frustrating because I'm like, just let people help you.
I think once you see the value of people loving other people, that it makes it a lot easier to become involved in that. My experience earlier on in life was to always be the one to pick up the check at the coffee shop.
Yeah.
And then one day I read a book, and in it, it stated something that changed my life, and that was, I am worth loving. I am worth being loved. And from that moment on,
I never picked up the check
up. No. But I would pick it up, and I would let someone else pick it up the next time. And it worked out just fine, and it's still that way.
I've been accused of having raptor arms when it comes to, oh, let me get that, guys. It's not true at all. Yeah. Also, though, and I think this is important for anyone who's younger and not at that place yet, where older age might lose. I mean, people can lose their spouse at all different ages, but the hopeful, most natural thing is you make a long run of it.
Right.
But it's thinking of it like a gas tank. If you don't, in your faith, if you don't fill your gas tank with walking with the Lord before it happens, then you're not going to have anything when it does.
Yes.
And you did. You had developed both you and Joni had developed relationships and had developed the skills to say, no, people need people. So when the time came, you were ready. And not that any one of us should be thinking, I'm getting ready for, my spouse to die or for, old age.
Right.
But we are, like, in a way, like, we're walking with the Lord when times are maybe good or other things are going on, because those things are coming and you need to fill your gas tank.
It becomes easier to do,
Right.
if you've been doing it for a while.
Yeah.
And the freedom that comes with that, allowing people to care about you, to do things for you. I can't set a price on that. It's just something that goes beyond a dollar value.
Yeah. Like we said, blessing is two people. It's a communication. So it's not just the person doing the blessing. Someone has to receive it. Yeah. And I know it's just been a few years, so it's fine if you're like, you don't have a lot of clarity with it. but those first, let's say, 3 months before we had the celebration of life, do you remember what that was like? Did you develop new routines? Was it hard to do that? Do you remember those days?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. It was definitely different.
Mm.
I had to make all the noise in the house. There was no one else
Yeah.
to pitch in with that.
Yeah.
But it was something that I knew was going to be that way.
Mm.
It wasn't going to go away, and all of
Mm-hmm.
a sudden everything would be back to the way it was.
Yeah.
And I think that helped realizing that, and
Face that.
having had the experience of being with people who've lost a spouse, lost a child. Um, you know, I guess that was my education when it came to ministry,
Yeah.
by just getting in there and doing it.
Did you clean some things up, or did you kind of leave some of her stuff the way it was at first, or how did you approach that?
Well, at the time, my son and daughter-in-law came up from where they live in Virginia, and
Yep.
my daughter from California,
Right.
and we thought it would be best to give her clothes that were still usable to a charitable organization, and
Mm-hmm.
just start the process of knowing that I was only going to be there for a limited amount of time.
Yeah.
It's just,
Yeah. Was that hard to? Was it? Would you? Because I remember when my mom died, and she died very suddenly, but
mm,
but still, Joni was 8 days. I mean, so it's not like it was a long illness where she
right.
was away for a long time.
Mm,
So it was similar that her stuff's there, her smell is in the house, her
mm,
right, and that was
mm.
the way it was with my mom. And it was, did you take comfort with some of that, or was it harder? Like it felt like she should still be walking into the room.
It, it it was difficult to see it there,
Yeah,
but it was also difficult to
get rid of it.
dispose of it
How
as
come do
well.
you think?
It was part of my life, even
Yeah.
though it was her possessions,
Mm,
but it was our life that had just been ripped apart.
right. Yeah. When y- did you find as you already said that your faith was strong through this process, and I would agree from my interactions with you. I never felt like, wow, he's really, it would have understandable if you did, but you really were strong through that. But did any of your faith or your prayer life, or did any of it change like during that time? Or was it,
No, I don't think so.
no,
I don't think so.
no, stayed consistent? Yeah.
It's when you ask a question like that, I have to stop and
Think.
momentarily think, but it's still
Mm,
fresh enough in my mind,
mm,
and I hope it always will be.
yeah.
I don't want to lose any of that.
No.
My memory of her is what I have left.
Yeah. Mm,
So, but because of the memory, then I can relive certain things we did, and
mm.
I remember a while after we had the celebration of life, I drove up into New Hampshire to the areas we always visited around our wedding anniversary time.
Mm,
That we went to a honeymoon place up there in
mm,
Wolfboro, New Hampshire.
mm-hmm.
So I went and traveled around, stayed at the same motel,
Really? Hmm.
did all the things we did, and it felt good to do that, even
Yeah.
though she wasn't with me.
Hmm.
So would I do it again? Yes.
Mm,
Would I feel the same way if I did it again? Yes, I believe I would.
mm, hmm.
I'm not one that, oh, I don't want to hear anything about my wife and her passing away. Remind
Yeah.
me of my wife. Tell me uh, you remember my wife. You
Yeah.
remember the way we were and all that
Mhm.
goes with it.
Mhm.
That's fine with me. If
Yeah.
I end up shedding a few tears,
It's okay.
that's fine.
Yeah.
You know, if you want to cry with me, fine.
Yeah.
Uh,
Mm.
I know it's, some people might think, well, it's easy to say that now, but that is who I am.
Mm.
And I make no apologies for it.
Mm.
I miss my wife. I miss her greatly.
Mm.
So do whatever you can to help me remember
Yeah.
my wife, our relationship, and all that went with it.
What would you tell someone in those first few months of losing someone, a spouse of a long and being alone like you were in your type of situation? What advice would you give them?
Trust the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
Draw your strength from Him.
Mm.
I think that's one of the things, one of the most important things that helped me and still helping me
Yeah.
to deal with being alone. You know, it's interesting. You can be in a crowded room and still be alone, and
Yes.
and that's the way I feel sometimes.
Mm.
So, um,
How come do you think?
for me, I think that's a part of the relationship Joni and I had together.
Yeah. You were one flesh.
Yes,
Mm.
yes, very much so.
Mm.
Um, if your life changes as a result of losing a spouse, then take a look at it. Maybe that's a good thing for you.
Mm.
For me, um, I have a lady friend now that she and I spend time together with
Mm-hmm.
each other, and I enjoy that. It doesn't mitigate anything to do with my wife.
Right. You have to keep living,
Exactly.
just like she
And
would have had to.
and I know from conversation on more than a few occasions, she wouldn't mind.
Right.
You know, if
Right.
somehow she knew about it, but you know,
Especially now, she's like, I'm
yeah,
good.
yeah,
You
but
do what you got to do.
yeah, but you know, life has definitely changed,
Mm.
but it's still the same.
Mm.
You get up in the morning, you get
Mm.
dressed, you do whatever you have to do, and so on. It's just a different kind of sameness.
Yeah.
Uh,
Relationships have been very important to you, though,
yes,
to get you through.
yes,
Yeah.
very much so. And
Mm.
I enjoy other people.
Yeah.
I think that's helped and is helping quite a bit in my life.
Mm. So we have the celebration of life, and that was pretty cool.
Mm.
That was a pretty cool day.
Yeah, you
Do you
know,
remember?
when I came to you with a list of things I wanted,
Yeah, it scared me.
it
I'm
it
like,
well,
how are we going to get this done in a few hours? No.
well, you and Lauren and Steve
Yeah,
put that package together
we did.
big time,
Met in
and
the conference room, wrote it all down, said, all right, let's
you know,
make this happen.
when I decided we were going to do what we did,
Mm-hmm.
I think it took me 5 minutes to make a rough list of what I wanted,
Mm-hmm.
the people that were going to be involved,
Mm-hmm.
the music,
Mm-hmm.
and of course the piper.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the way it was fitted
What was the
together,
piper for? She loved the bagpipes?
she was born into a Scottish family,
Mm.
lived with us, her grandparents and her mother, who all three were from Scotland.
Yeah.
And but she loved the pipes.
Yeah.
I used to tell her, you know that wall between England and Scotland. You know why they built that? That's to keep the,
The
the
bagpipe sound away?
well, I forget what I called them, but whatever the case, she didn't like that.
Well, nice of you to allow a bagpiper into her celebration, and
Oh,
he did an amazing job.
if she had heard that, she would have been beside
She
herself
might
with
have heard it.
joy.
Who knows? That was
Yeah,
pretty loud. It
yeah.
was pretty good. I've done hundreds of funerals, and I don't think that I can recall ever having a bagpipe piper
Mm.
as a part of one. Certainly as part of maybe the grave, but I can't even remember that.
Mm.
And I've always enjoyed that I mean, it's not something that I would listen to regularly, but I
No.
think it's a very impressive musical instrument, and it's so cool to have been able to honor her that way in a really special way.
Well, she asked for two things uh, in the course of conversation
Mm-hmm.
at various times. One was the congregation singing the old hymn, Grace Greater Than Our Sin.
I remember that.
And the other was she wanted a piper at the service.
We did both.
And we did it.
And Joni
Did
did
it
her
proud.
one assignment that I give everybody is make your funeral easy for me. I know we don't call it a funeral, but you know what I mean.
Yes.
And meaning not easy emotionally, but easy to just be like, we're celebrating. She knew the
Exactly.
Lord. We have evidence of that, of her faith, and her life reflected that.
Yes.
And the only problem we have is keeping it from going too long, because it could. When I've done services where if I don't know the person and the family's like, she liked to read, or I'm like, okay, well, I need something. Give me something more than that. Like,
Right.
does anyone want to speak? No. Is that, and I mean, that might not be the person, maybe it's more the family, but with Joni, it was like, we could have had 50 people speak. We could have had hundreds of stories, not just funny or cool about her life, but stories that reflected her walk with Jesus. And man, that's a legacy that we all want. You have the same. Not that we're hurrying you out the door, my friend, but it will be something very similar with all that you have done. You will also hear, well done, good and faithful servant. I'm positive of that.
Well, that was a large part of our life to
Yeah.
serve in that
But how
capacity.
cool to do it as a team,
Yes.
It doesn't always work out, but I tell couples when I do premarital counseling, like, you have different gifts. So sometimes one of you works with this and one of you, but if you can do ministry together, that is the best, because it doesn't really seem like work, right?
And it made a difference to the people we reached out to.
Yeah. You could reach more
I-
people because you had your wife with you.
I don't think there's any comparison between the two ways, doing it singly or as a team.
Yeah.
Definitely the team effort would
Yeah.
be so much better.
Especially with what you were doing. You weren't leading a choir. You were going into people's homes and nursing homes and hospitals. And that involves men and women, and it involves, spots where she was more effective, and spots where you were more effective. And so that just, God put that together. It's obvious.
Well, the beauty of having a team effort was the fact that when it was a woman to be ministered to, then she just stepped right up to the plate,
Right.
swung at the first ball that came along, to minister. I was amazed for someone who you might call her an amateur at that. I don't, but none of us had training. Neither one of us training in the sense that this is how you do it and A, B, C, D. I often have marveled at the ability that God gave me to do this sort of thing.
That's what it is, right? God equips, and
Very much so.
yeah, it gives you the compassion and empathy. So since then, you've obviously had to keep on living, like we've already talked about. But, gosh, the biggest time I wish Joni was still around is when you decided to go out and mow the lawn and almost killed yourself. She might have been there to be like, nope.
I still haven't heard the end of it.
You shouldn't, but you're now at a place where that can't happen, I hope.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a whole nother faith in the struggle episode, right?
It's funny.
For people who don't know, you went out, even though you had a lawn service, but they didn't show up.
Right.
So you went on the lawnmower, much to your son and daughter's chagrin, and riding lawnmower, and you went up a hill, and
Well, it was actually going down a hill.
Oh, you were going down the hill.
Towards the street. It was a 4-foot high wall at the front of the property.
Yeah.
And for some reason, I'm not sure what it was, the tractor just started rolling backwards faster and faster, hung up on the wall, tossed me off, and I landed flat on my back, almost out in the street. And then I look up and see the tractor flipping over in midair and
Falling
landing on my chest. So I,
Man.
the funny part about it, I did not feel like that was the end of the world.
Yeah.
I was at peace.
Yeah. Yeah.
If
Well, it wasn't clearly. You bounced back pretty well from that. But I think, and you were already thinking at that time, which was another frustrating thing. I was like, he was about to get out of there, out of
yeah,
that house. And so now, as you mentioned a few times, and we've talked about, you're at the, what do we call that? The Mill Apartments. I don't know what
yeah,
that's called.
it's
And it's, you have to be
Linwood Mill is the
over
name of it.
50, no kid. Well, how does that work? Those places?
It's a residential building. It's not assisted living or anything
Yeah.
like that.
But is there a requirement to be older or no?
Over 55.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So it's a lot of people
Yeah.
in your, and that's been a real blessing for you, huh?
It has very much so.
Because you're not alone as much.
I went directly there from the hospital when they
Yeah.
released me.
Yeah.
I never went back to my house,
Right.
and so I had a lot of my woodworking and metalworking shop.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one thing I miss
Yeah.
from the house itself. I like
Yeah.
the house, but
Yeah.
I could get along without it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so they brought me to the mill. I looked around when I sat down after arriving, and I said, I'm home. And it's been my home since.
Mm.
And with all the people there, it certainly makes it a lot easier in many respects to go through each day.
When I think about you, it's like I know it's not seamless at all, but it seems from the outside perspective, a very seamless transition from a wonderful partnership with a wife for 64 years to having to do life by yourself.
Mm.
And I don't know, you just been like, yeah, but like, I don't think that's all that common to have both. Some are probably like glad they're not married anymore,
Yeah.
right? Like, yeah.
I've known a few, yes.
So they're like, I'm free. And that's one way, or there's others that
Yeah.
just can't get past it.
Mm.
And you sort of found that beautiful zone of, I really miss my wife. And there is a piece of me gone, but I still am here to live.
Yes.
Is there any other tricks to that people can glean from, or?
Well, I don't know that you can teach that.
Yeah,
Um,
probably right.
it's one thing to say 2 + 2 = 4,
Yeah,
but all bets are off when it comes to relationships.
right.
And for me, it was something that was extremely important. In fact, it was my life.
Mm.
The fact that we had that relationship for so long.
Mm.
Now, she used to say, I drove her crazy more often than not, but she would then say, but I love him so much. I
Yeah.
think that kept me going.
Yeah, yeah. She married a guy. That's,
Yeah.
that's what we do.
Yep. Oh, yeah. Yeah. But I guess the only thing I could say to people, especially for the husband part of the deal,
Mm.
is you have to make your own way now. You work it out for yourself, because I can't help you in that, because you're not like me and I'm not like you.
Yeah,
And so everyone has a different approach, a different reason for doing or not doing certain things, and you're the one that's going to make your life what it is going to be from then on.
Mm.
And what you decide, as far as first of all, continuing to trust the Lord,
Key.
is what's going to drive your life from that point on. And
Well, the bigger principle remains. I completely agree with you. We're all different. Our situations are different. Grief is going to hit us in different ways. There's no rules to put on that. But the overall strategy, for lack of a better word, that you have taken to say, the Lord still has me here to keep on living. He has a purpose in it. In a lot of ways, it's the people now that your church family, of course, but it's also the people you now live around that you can be a light.
Right.
And so you've sort of found that. So it's whatever, some people are like, I don't want to have all those relationships. I'm not as much of an extrovert, or, but there's still whatever God has for you to live, he wants you to live. And I think that
Yes.
in of itself is really important.
See, I was never like that when I was in high school.
Mm.
Very withdrawn a lot of time.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you when it came about that this changed to what I am now. Joni used to tell me that the years I spent in ministry, that was my Bible school.
Mm.
That was what taught me
Mm.
what I needed to know in order to do the things I did.
Yeah.
And I mean, I never had classes. I never had
Yeah.
even a pastor telling me, well, this is how you want to do a particular methodology. No, I know it was God's leading
Mm.
to simply be there at the right time, say the right things, do the right things.
Mm.
And it became, and I don't want to minimize it, but it became second nature.
Mm.
I would go out and do whatever it was, not knowing what I was going to run into a lot of times.
Mm.
But again, when I asked God for a ministry, and that's all I prayed, I didn't want to tell him what I thought was best. I left that up to him, and he did one thing and did it beautifully, and he gave me exactly what I wanted, a people ministry.
Yeah, and equipped you to do it. It's a great lesson for people.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And
To know that, like, I don't know if I can do that. If God calls you, he equips you. You just got to trust him to step out and do it, Would you say there's been any specific verse or passage that's been from God's word that's helped you through all of this?
yes, in fact, I wrote it out. Matthew 11:28.
Mm.
Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest.
Mm. Why that one? I mean, that's a great one, but why for you?
Because the things I did in ministry were not easy.
Mm.
We're talking about lives. We're talking about eternal lives.
Mm.
Lives, rather. And but I think this sums it up pretty much.
Yeah.
I'm looking at words that Jesus spoke.
Yeah. Yeah.
If it was good enough for him, it was good enough for me.
Find your rest in him. Yeah.
Yes. Where else am I going to find it?
Yeah. Last question I'd want to ask you is, and this might be hard, probably not, but it might be. What would you say to someone who's on the other side that knows someone, a friend, a dad, or a mom, or grandfather, or somebody who's going through it? What should we do to help, and what should we not do?
Well, that's hard to sum up
Yeah.
as an all-encompassing manner. It has to include, first of all, knowing Jesus as Savior and Lord.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the key is caught up in those few words.
Yeah.
Without him, where are we going to be?
Mm-hmm.
It's like being on a street corner and not knowing which way to go.
Yeah. Were there specific things that people did for you that were like, that was not necessarily like, they cooked me meatloaf, but like, is there specific ways that people were like a real help? And was there anything that wouldn't have been helpful? People might say things or do things or assume things.
Well, as far as the saying things,
Mm-hmm.
when in the course of a conversation, the length of my marriage came up, they would have said something to prompt that,
Mm-hmm.
and then be all apologetic at having raised the issue. And, I'm sorry to have hurt you with that. I said, no, you didn't hurt me.
Mm-mm.
You gave me one more reminder to rejoice in
Mm.
at the life I had with my wife.
Yeah.
Don't, eh, I think I mentioned earlier, even if there are tears accompanying my hearing of what you said, don't let that stop you from doing it again.
Yeah. That's interesting. So don't necessarily avoid talking about somebody who was lost. They
Yes,
actually kind of want to talk
yes,
about them.
yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was just one more reminder of
Right.
a fabulous relationship I had with her.
Right. And because even though she's gone, her imprint in this world is still very much here. Family, friends, ministry, things she's done. And to not talk about someone almost pushes that aside. This would make
Exactly,
sense. You're like, no, I don't want
exactly.
to do that. Yeah.
I I just marvel at the fact that I can look at things the way I do.
Mm.
Uh,
Yeah.
I've been in some interesting situations where I didn't think the same as a lot of other people, but
Mm-hmm.
that's the way I am,
Yeah.
and you know that.
Yeah. Well, that's how God wired you, you know? But,
Yeah. Well, I'm I'm content
mm,
to the degree I can be content.
mm,
I would love to have her back,
yeah.
but the very last thing I would ever do
Mm,
is, if I could, bring her back, knowing where she
mm.
is and what she's not going through.
She'd be saying, no, thank you.
Yep. No, and I would agree 100% with her.
Do you ever wonder if Lazarus was kind of mad? Like, why did you bring me back? I've thought of that. I'm like,
Yeah,
everyone's like, oh, it's so great. Lazarus is like, yeah, great for you.
yeah. That's a good question. I don't think until we go through it.
We're not going to know.
No, we have absolutely no idea. I don't care
Yeah.
about all the books that are written on that subject and so on.
Yeah, you don't know.
No.
That means you're not meant to know.
If it isn't clear in the Bible that, and
He's given us what we need. The rest of it,
yeah,
hold it loosely. Yeah.
I'm not going to read anything into
It's still
it
kind
that's
of
not
funny
there.
to think of them at dinner that night and Lazarus going, Jesus, really? I mean, that was amazing. Why would you bring me back to all this?
Yeah, yeah,
Him going, sorry, man, I had to prove a big point.
yeah, yeah.
Well, John, I want to thank you so much for telling your story. Not everyone will be willing to do it. It's obviously it's not unique in that a lot of people go through it,
Yes,
but I think everybody's story is unique. But there's a lot to be gleaned from it. Really, just the more you trust the Lord in your early stages of life, the more you'll be able to lean on that.
yes.
And that's really the biggest thing I've gotten out of what you've said is like, and I've seen that the contentment that comes from God. You know?
I appreciate the opportunity to share
Yeah.
even just a little bit of our life together, and even after she was called home to be with the Lord.
Yeah. And if people need to talk, I know they know you're willing if they're going through that or they're,
Most certainly.
yeah.
I mean, if I could do it as a regular routine, I should be able to do it when it's off the cuff, so
That's
to
right.
speak.
You can. Well, once again, appreciate it, man. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're more than welcome.
And stop. Good job. Awesome.
Yeah.
That's great.